Hey CDA, and welcome back to Plan B Terraform, where we haven't done a lot of terraforming, although the temperature is slowly going up. But I did actually unlock the rails and trains in the last episode, and that is going to completely change how I'm going to be building everything. Pretty much I'm going to be deleting everything that I've done so far and replacing it with a superior production line that is just going to be more durable throughout the entire game. Now, before I start just randomly placing down new factories, I do want to take a quick look at the layout of the map. So I'm switching to the alternative view over here. Basically, the lighter areas are, the lower they are in the world, as in altitude is lower. And lower altitude means that that is likely where the water is going to flow to. Because as the ice is going to melt, we'll get rivers, we'll get oceans, lakes, etc. And that means that if we build anything in these areas, these very white areas, then those are at a relatively low altitude. You can see 100 meters over here. If I compare that, for example, where I have my mall over here, this is at an altitude of 400, so it's less likely to be drowning in the water once the ice starts melting. Now, in particular, I think this area, and you can also kind of tell it from the color of the red scale. This is a little bit more red. This area is pretty high up, so I think I have a lot of resources over here. I have a lot of altitude and a lot of room to build over here. So I'm actually thinking that this might be the best place to start my initial expansion of my mall, my factories, and automating everything along that line. The only downside about that is that my two biggest cities are actually these two, which are not anywhere near a lot of building space like the other one. So I maybe should have thought about that at the beginning, but anyway, we'll have to deal with it. It's not going to be a real problem, I don't think. Okay, so step one, I'm going to completely industrialize an iron node, a larger one, as you can see, and by using these Mark II depots, I can make sure I hit every single node and every single extractor in here. So this should mean we have a lot of supply running into this outer line of depots. I am then going to add a train line around this entire thing, as you can see, and another one up here in order to start building some factories. So let's see, if we take some depots and we put them out like this, and we set these to receive iron ore, something along these lines, then we can put some factories next to that, and these are going to be producing steel bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we want more than 4? We can probably go all the way up to 6 maybe. Let's see what works. Let's copy paste these as well, and then we can actually have another row of these behind here, and then another row like so. And these should not be producing iron ore, by the way. These should be producing the steel bars, or receiving the steel bars, I should say. Let's copy that like so. And then if we make a nice little figure around here like this, then we have the first node of our industrial center. I can then run a train from over here to, say, over here, and it's going to automatically do everything I need it to. The origin and start should probably be reversed. That's the reverse. There we go. Is this running like I want it to? It's taking a long way around. Not sure why that is, but that should work fine. And look at that. We indeed have a train and now leaving for that station. Let's double check if it's actually running like it should. We can speed that up a little bit. So it's going to stop here eventually. Let's see. Yep, and there's a lot of drones supplying it, so that should be just fine. And then is it going to arrive over there? Can all these stations reach it? Seems to be working good enough at least. And there we go. We have the first steel in production now. Okay, so I was just looking at it for a moment, and it seems that this location determines where the drones can actually pick things up. So we should probably keep it on a 4-width ratio, so we actually make sure that all of these drones are working at optimal efficiency. Something like this, and that should mean that all the trains can now be reached. Now there's a total of 720 iron ore demand over here for those 8 factories. Remember, it's 8 of them. It's quite a lot already, and that means that I can send in additional trains. Now I have 9 trains driving on this road. As you can see, they're coming in one by one. Looks kind of awesome. And I already like this a lot more than I did the original trucks. Now there's a couple of things we can actually do with all that iron now. So we can build some more of these depots over here. And then we can do a couple of things. So we can add in some factories to make, for example, mechanical parts. A couple of those will be nice. I'm also going to need a lot more of these extractors. So what I'm going to do is set up some assembly plants to make exactly that. Maybe 2 of these. No, let's make it 4. But let's scale things up really nicely. And then I'm just gonna add some mechanical part output over here like that. Make sure I complete my railway around this as well. And look, we have another district ready. This is kind of partly a mall and kind of partly a construction center. I'm going to do the same thing for the aluminum and concrete production, and then of course we can add easily in some carbon and oxygen production as well. This is just coming out of thin air anyway, literally. So yeah, and that is the nice next step towards making the more complex materials. Now, I actually don't need to use trains to transport everything in here, because honestly, I'm doing pretty much everything right now with the drones. Just by placing the districts next to each other that actually need each other, and then the depots can actually hover over the train rails and just supply it to the other side. Now, I am going to need, for example, polymer bars and aluminum to make the high-tech parts over here, and I am going to need a train for that, because the polymer is right next door, but I am going to add in a train, and then that's why I have this here in the center. So this location where the aluminum is going to arrive should be able to reach all of these 4 depots, so it can be on and offloaded pretty quickly. Aluminum bars, let's test out if that theory is actually correct. I probably don't need a lot of trains because this is a pretty short distance. Let's see. There's the train, and yep, zip, 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 yeah, and there we have the high-tech parts in production as well. And now, actually, just with this little setup over here, I'm producing every single resource in the game that I have currently unlocked. So now all there is left is to set up a mall somewhere where we're getting some of that stuff going, so we can actually build our buildings, or I can just add a little mall piece in here somewhere and do it like that. Or if you want to be really lazy, you can just sneak in a little bit of assembly plans in every place that has the correct materials already. For example, the depots Mark II can be made from the same materials as I'm making the high-tech parts. Just do it like that. And quite frankly, I'm gonna consider not building some of these buildings at all, because I already have them all set up that's still working. At least it will work for a little while more, I think. Let me double check on how we're doing on materials here. These are gonna run out at some point, but for the moment I have hundreds of assembly halls and things like that, so I don't need to necessarily keep working on that all the time, and if I ever run out, I can just build them pretty easily. So yeah, you can leave them out if you need to. I'm also not going to be producing roads and trucks anymore, because like I said, we're just going to be using trains from this point forward. Oh, and as a side note, if you're wondering what's happening here with these trains, there's just too many supply trains arriving here at the moment that they can't unload, so this is why there's a big pile up. However, trains do phase through each other in this game, so you don't have to worry about trains colliding or anything like that. Some of you might like that, some of you might hate that. There's no wrong opinion there, it's just how this game works. But the main reason that I have this horrible pileup over here is just because I'm not exporting anything other than the few buildings that are actually producing something here. What I am going to do is make sure that all of this production is now going to go to New Chennai, because that is where my stuff initially is going to go, and I'm going to grow the city. And there we go, we have a nice little supply depot set up over here to make sure that the reinforced concrete and oxygen that I'm producing now in my main hub is actually being transported to New Chennai so it can start to grow. Okay, that took a minute, but as you can see, the city is growing pretty rapidly now. It's already more than half my population by itself, and it's also producing a decent amount of waste. So as you can see, it's both producing metal waste and plastic waste. Plastic waste is actually a new thing that we just unlocked. But the metal waste I'm exporting over here, and then it's going to go all the way back to my hub over here to be not put into the gas factory over here, because as you can see, I am lowering the temperature, raising the temperature, I should say, quite a bit now. But I'm also producing that waste back into steel bars and aluminum bars, which basically means that my city itself is now producing steel and aluminum without me doing anything other than making sure it's not dying in the process. So we're getting a little bit of our resources back, basically. It's not quite infinite yet, but we'll get to that point quickly enough. The nice thing about that plastic waste, which is a really weird thing to say by the way, is that you can turn it into polymer bars, and because I'm also making aluminum here from the other waste, what I can actually set up is an entire new high high-end products, high-tech parts, I should say, production, because that is the exact two things I need for that. Now, steel goes into pretty much everything, but it is important that if you're recycling your waste, you actually do come up with a way to use the stuff that you're producing with that. Otherwise, the waste is still going to be backed up because the main products that you're then producing out of that are going to be backed up. And if you want to get really meta about it, you can even turn the steel into the mechanical parts and then use those mechanical parts along with the high-tech parts to make some trains, and then you're 100% sure you're always consuming at least some of your waste. Of course, it depends on how much you're actually producing, but this is a way to funnel all of your waste into something useful. Speaking of which, we are currently growing our city quite fast, and there we go, we have something else unlocked. Once water is flowing, it could cause some problems. Dams and pumps will help you control it. Unfortunately, this is the only development we were able to fund. Even budgets to combat global warming here have plummeted. Okay, it's not like the house is on fire immediately, some say. Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Anyway, dams and dam pumps are going to allow us to do something about the water, and these things are actually, I think, new compared to when I first played the game 2 years ago. Luckily, with my easy setup over here, I can just import some of those high-tech parts and reinforced concrete I need to make both the dam elements themselves as well as the dam pumps. Now, I'm probably not going to overproduce that in a whole square over here, because that's going to be a resource intensive like hell, and probably a lot more pumps and dams that I need. I actually already kind of have the problem with the extractors at this point. I'm making way more than I need. But hey, look, we also have an ice extractor, and we can extract nitrogen from ice. So if I go back to my previous thingy, nitrogen is actually going to help us produce NF3, I guess that's nitrogen fluoride or something like that, which is another greenhouse gas, and that should help us get the temperature up and running a lot faster as well. In order to do that, we're going to need some more reinforced concrete and mechanical parts to make some ice extractors to get that going. That seems a worthwhile next step. And again, it's really easy to make that stuff because I have everything already here. And I'm trying to keep the logistics limited to the bots as much as possible, because that just avoids having trains running around. And that's probably a little less CPU intensive as well, although actually I'm not entirely sure about that. It doesn't really matter, the game seems to be pretty well optimized at this point, because I have no stuttering whatsoever. Even though I have, if I zoom out a little bit, a lot of bots already flying around and there's a lot of activity happening. Okay, there we go. We have some new factory setup that can start making some nitrogen and fluoride into gas to heat up the planet even more. I have the fluoride already coming in, and there you go. There's the first nitrogen as well. And that is actually mined all the way on the pole. And yes, I did intentionally put it all the way up here because this ice is going to melt pretty soon. And this ice is going to be the first to melt, if I'm not mistaken. So this just makes sure this will keep working for a long time. And this is actually super simple. There's just nitrogen coming out of the ice. So I can just keep extending this like this, and then everything should get transported. This production is fairly slow. You know, I don't actually need to do anything here other than just set this up, set up a train line and completely forget about it. And these drones will carry it all the way over here. So as long as I'm not overproducing too much, this is going to take care of itself. And even if I'm overproducing, I mean, I'm just exporting it here anyway, so that is not really an issue. Now, interesting enough, the growth of New Chennai actually halted here for a moment, for the main reason that I'm not supplying it with enough concrete and high-tech parts. Now, that's not because I'm not producing enough. I probably am not running enough trains. So let's see. How much of each do I need right now? Almost 100. And let's see. The oxygen train is just bringing in something like 59. So let's make sure we up this. Let's bring it all the way up to 200. So we have something to spare. Same thing over here. And then the same thing over here. Now, the real question is how much am I actually producing? Probably not quite enough of that. How much is one of these producing? This is just 30. Now remember, I'm also producing a little bit over here, so I should be producing enough, I think. I should probably add in another train though to make sure that the actually, I'm not sure. We should be able to make sure we are completely utilizing this. I think that should be fine. What I can do is well, actually, let me copy this one. This is the depot production. Let's put that over here because I have plenty of that. So that's just the surplus production now. And this will be the main production. So now I have definitely enough production over here for the high-tech parts. We can export all of that. I actually am inclined to up this production a little further. And, you know, we can easily do that because we have all the materials in the world to do this. And there we go, we have a nice growing city, and this is it. With our new carbon nanotube material, we should be able to build a space elevator. We're building space elevators now, okay, that is definitely new. This will help transportation of colonists and resource. We'll use it to bring your engineered seeds to grow more food for your cities. Okay, that sounds really good. Where are we going? Oh, apparently we're going here. The space elevator base is already ready. I'm not sure why it's here, but okay. Now we need a lot of nanotubes to build the cable. Okay then. How are we going to do that? So apparently we need a lot of nanotubes. Okay, let me look at this for a moment. Oh, and before we dive into that, actually the temperature is already risen to -20. And that means that we're now in the zone of a liquid water release. Just a little bit, but you can see here in this crater over here, there's actually liquid water. Not doing anything yet, and the polar caps are definitely not melting just yet. But that's just a matter of time now. I'm actually releasing 2 different gases, and especially the new gas that I just added is going to really add in really quickly. You can see this is much more effective than the initial gas we were pumping in that is slowly losing its effectiveness. Okay, so it seems that I first have to build a construction site, and I think this is actually where the research center is then going to be placed. That is going to be producing the nanotubes. Well, the research centers themselves are pretty straightforward, just reinforced concrete. So I increased my production of all of the concrete, the steel, and the reinforced concrete a little bit so I could actually do this. As you can see, this is going just fine. These are relatively expensive, but you know, this is just completely dedicated to building some of these. And these things have to be built next to a city, I believe. So, if I understand this correctly, I'm going to have to place these in here somewhere. Now, these are going to be using high-tech parts as well as reinforced concrete. So I think I place them down like this, maybe? Not entirely sure if this works. Does this work? Yeah, it does. This is a ginormous building, by the way. It is also going to cost me 200 of each. I mean, just once, I assume, but still, that's quite a bit. And then we're going to have some nano research centers. Not sure if this is actually going to turn into one or if that's a separate building, but I guess we're about to find out. Okay, there we go. Yeah, indeed, the construction's place turned into the nano center. So we are now producing nanotubes over here. I'm gonna have to, I think, demolish part of my city to get them out. I mean, I could do it over here, but I kind of don't want to. But that's not a problem because the city can rebuild itself, and then we can export them to the space elevator. I think that's where they're supposed to go, yeah, right? Yeah. And then it's just going to take us 10 years, in terms of game time at least, in order to get the 1,000 production that I need. But you know, it's all for a good cause. Okie dokie, so there we go. We are now exporting the nanotubes to our facility over here, where I combine some new aluminum bar production along with the nanotube production that I'm importing, and that should result into some space elevator cables, because all I need to do is put a factory to put the two together. Actually, need quite a bit of nanotubes in order to make that, so this is not going to be satisfied for a long while, at least not this entire setup, but that's kind of the point. There's already a train waiting over here to take that those nanotubes all the way down here to the space elevator. It's not that far away actually, and I think that should do the trick. And yeah, everything is working like intended. We have some nanotubes coming in. These are being used to create a space elevator. It's not quite done yet. We need 1,000 of these in order for that to be the case. As you can see, they're coming in pretty decent numbers at the moment. What's also working like intended, by the way, is the fact that the temperature is still going up. And look at those beautiful little lakes starting to coalesce over here. Now, it's not quite a Earth-like planet yet, but we're getting closer and closer to that threshold. If you look at the temperature or the liquid water release, then yeah, we're definitely in the good zone at the moment. Okay, I think this should be the last train. Oh, whoa, 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 that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to speed things up. There we go. Is that 1,000? Yes, and look at that. That's an actual space elevator going all the way up to space. It's operational. We'll start bringing you seeds at once. These seeds are engineered to produce greenhouse food very efficiently. Well, that sounds, well, quite efficient, honestly. So we're going to get various seeds. So it will allow us to produce food. We can also start pumping up water. We'll get compost, which we can make from carbon and nitrogen. So both of those things are very easy to produce, so that's going to be awesome. Yeah, so build pumping stations near shores and the rivers over wet areas visible in the enhanced view. You need to raise the temperature high enough to get liquid water. Well, we have plenty of that already. And then we should be good to go. Reach a total population of 6,000. Okay, so let's see. We're going to need some greenhouses, which is just steel bars and polymers. So that's not that complicated. We're also going to need some pumping stations. That's reinforced concrete and high-tech parts. And I think... yeah, we have seeds incoming from the space elevator itself. Okay then, so let's start making some compost out of nitrogen and carbon. All of that I can actually produce in the icy area. I'm also gonna have to pump up some water, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue considering apparently there's a lot of underground water all over the place. I'm a little worried about how that underground water is going to either drown my production area over here or drown my city, but for the moment they seem to be fine, although the ocean is getting closer. But this is like uphill, so hopefully that water can spread, for example, into this basin over here as well. But yeah, let's dig up some water. And the nice thing is that if you zoom in a little bit, you can actually see the underground water flows and how thick they are and how much the water saturation is. So that really helps you to determine where you're actually going to be placing your pumps. And that means now we can start placing down these awesome looking greenhouses. I really like the looks of these things. So they need the seeds. I'm bringing them in from the elevator. They need the water, which is right next door because I built the water here over this line that I just showed you. And then now I just need to bring in the compost from all the way up north in here as well. And then we can start producing some food. Now this actually is going to ruin my layout a little bit because we have 3 inputs, but also an output. So yeah, I know that's why I actually built this in a new section, because I am going to have to still import the compost over here, and then I have to export. This is going to be the actual food. There we go. Let's put that over here. So this is going to be a little bit of a different layout. So in order not to break up my nice little checkerboard over here, I'm just gonna do that down here. I do have to say, I really like the looks of this, and look at all that luscious food being grown in our food department over here. It's actually producing quite a bit of food because it is doing a production cycle of 30 per annum, and every time it should be producing 4 food, so that's 120 food per greenhouse, if I understand this correctly, and I think that seems to be the case. At least I'm able to run a lot of trains out of here, at least. And these trains are now once again heading to New Chennai, and yes, I have still not done anything new with the other 2 cities, but I am bringing in some more food, and look at that. I really like how you can just kind of delete a part of this city and build a little train in there, and then we have a supply train going right into the center of the city, and the city will just grow back around. If you delete parts of your city, you do lose those people living there, so don't go nuts, basically what I'm saying. But this does allow you to be a little bit flexible in how you make your layouts and designs. Now by doing this, I can actually make sure that the 4th resource is actually also getting into my supply centers from this side. That's why I did that. And I'm wondering how far the city will grow now. So it took me actually a little bit of expanding in order to get enough resources to actually have the city to grow, because if you look at this, it needs 143 reinforced concrete, oxygen, high-tech parts, and food, all of that, in order to sustain itself. And well, the city is actually growing pretty large, which also means it might actually be easier to grow different cities at the same time, in order, especially to reach the growth goals in here. But at the same time, you do need these larger cities as well in order to, for example, produce nanotubes. So it's a little bit of a mix and match. I have been completely ignoring, once again, these other cities. I'm not even sure they're still growing. They might have shrunk in the meanwhile. It would be fairly trivial to get these cities to grow. I mean, look at this demand. It's just a little bit of each, but still, it's still 38. So it feels like the return on investment on a larger city in the end is actually better, mostly also because you get waste back. So this is producing stuff as well, and the smaller cities just aren't. At the same time, if I invest in those cities, they will keep growing, and of course that will also give a return eventually. So it seems you have a bit of a choice. Do you go for the trifecta city approach, basically, or do you just focus on one and grow that very, very large? Honestly, for now, it seems like both ways of playing are completely viable. But well, we made it, and now we have genetically modified plant species in order to make them viable in our atmosphere, but they still need appropriate temperature and humidity. Okay, so we have pine trees, eucalyptus trees, and a tree greenhouse to get that all going. Now, for kind of obvious reasons, I hope pine trees grow a little bit better in colder areas, while eucalyptus trees are more suited for warm weather. But other than that, they cost the same to produce, and this is going to be the first real step in making our planet look pretty. Now, I added some more greenhouses to produce both kinds of these trees, but honestly, you don't need to produce that many trees. The only thing you need to do is plant at least one down in a suitable area, and then it will keep spreading. Talking about spreading, his water is actually kind of coming up a bit too much. Although, as you can see, we have a lot of water and fertile ground now around the planet, so that is at least progressing quite well, and New Chennai has turned out to be a very nice vacation destination at this point, being at sea. Well, maybe not that great yet. It's mostly beach and not much else. But maybe to add to my point, we can add some trees to that beach and make it a little bit better to vacation on. So the average temperature seems to be somewhere between 5 and 15 degrees right now, and that means that I think both of these trees will grow just fine. However, because this is the warmest part of our planet and things are still heating up, I am going to stick with the eucalyptus tree in this area for now. And you can see viability 97%, but there are some areas that do not have any water, so that's not where they want to grow. I'm just going to plant down one, and we're going to leave it there for a bit. And there you go, you can actually see it actively filling in, becoming more and more green, and that is just from this single patch of trees. Now, that means that you don't have to go around your entire planet filling it up with trees in every single hex on the planet in order to make it green. Nope, that is going to take care of itself mostly. Now, I will add in some more trees by myself, because obviously we want this entire planet to be lush and green, and doing so will definitely speed all of that up. And if you want to be efficient about that, of course, I recommend placing it near the areas where there's actually water, and you can easily tell that by turning on the alternative vision. And while our little planet is turning green slowly, we are also able to make tempered steel and nanocomposite now. We need the tempered steel in order to make nanocomposite out of the steel as well as the nanotubes, and then we're going to need to bring that into our city to help it grow even further, because right now it is stuck at around, I think, 10,000, yep, over here, and that's because we're not bringing in that nanocomposite just yet. I'm also not bringing in enough oxygen, apparently, and that's probably not a good thing for a city this size. Okay, there we go. I have set up some tempered steel production over here that then translates into the nanocomposite production over here, which is then being brought into New Chennai. Now, I do have to say, I am starting to like setting these things up a little bit bigger, mostly because I've noticed that if you try to put in a lot of these train stations, you can't actually put in this train station on these cross sections. It makes sense, I guess, but that does limit the amount of trains that you can have driving around this area, or at least the amount of train stations with different destinations that you can have driving around. So making these things a little larger, and probably even doing so from the beginning, just makes your life a little easier. Now, let's see, how many trains do I actually have driving over here? Just one? That is definitely not going to be enough. I'm not sure how much I need, but apparently we are already back to growing. Now, I redesigned this a little bit, also taking out some of the curves that disconnect this supply center for my city. So I'm hoping that this patch will actually be filled in by the city. There's still a building right next to there. Because otherwise, actually what I could also do is place this like that, place this like that, and then remove this one, I guess. There we go. And that should connect everything back up. Even if we do this, we could actually add in another one, I think, over here. Yep, that has... Oh, nope. No, I messed it up again. Because that deleted the one building that the other two were attached to. Okay then, that is not going to work, so then let's do it like this. And then let's put that third one there. There's the building. There's a building. Don't delete that building, TDA. And yeah, now we have 3 of them supplying things to all our cities. I think that should work just fine. I mean, the empty things here are just the nanocomposites that are just coming in by train. There's a lot of trains driving on this railroad now. It's kind of awesome. I also like the fact that it's stylized if you zoom out. with a different color, so you can easily tell what is on the train. And if you zoom in, you can actually tell it by just looking at the train itself. So we are, by the way, at a plus negative. That's not a thing. Anyway, we are at a positive average temperature now on the entire planet. And, well, I haven't really been focusing on turning things green. But at least the area around our city is starting to look a lot more hospitable than it did before. You can see this forest grew into an actual forest without me having to place every single tree down here. So that is awesome. I've also been kind of following the streams and planting some trees along that, which makes it a lot easier to make sure that the vegetation reaches everywhere. But as you can see, there's whole areas where I could do that I haven't done that yet. But all in all, it's starting to look pretty nice. So even though New Chennai is growing pretty nicely, I do want to make sure I have a secondary city growing up as well. So I basically just duplicated everything I was already doing now with a little bit more space in mind. So you can see this factory setup over here is very similar to the one I had before, but just with a little bit more width in it. And this should be enough to get my second city starting to grow as well. Okay, with 2 cities growing, our people are increasing enormously fast now, which is a good thing. And by the way, we're not just making the planet pretty by making everything green. There's actually a mechanical reason to do this as well. If we check our city now, you can see the reduced need for O2 is already at minus 27%. And that is because all these trees and that grass and stuff like that as well is actually producing oxygen into the atmosphere as well. So if we now check this, you can see there is quite a bit of O2 pressure. And actually it's high enough that we could start farming already. But the only downside being we don't actually have farms unlocked. But I have a feeling that is going to be the next level. And there we go, next level. Greetings, please be advised that the organization is now taking charge of maintaining global peace on Earth. Your nanocomposite will be a great contribution to this noble cause. Please bring some to the space elevator. Okay. This is worse than we thought. The space elevator was not meant to provide resources for war. Okay, so apparently we're not going to get some farms. Let's see, we are... so the space elevator will now be changing nanocomposite into seeds. That's interesting. So it's now actually no longer actively producing seeds by itself. We need to supply it with nanocomposite rather than space elevator cables, so we can switch those back. Okay, that is definitely a change, of course. It also means that I can't really produce food at the moment because I'm not getting that those seeds in anymore. So we're going to have to change this up really fast. On the bright side, I am producing far more nanocomposite than I currently need, so hopefully this is just going to be a matter of supplying this to here. I'm not sure how much I need. Let's make sure it's enough, and that means we are once again going to get seeds back in. Okay, so here's a nice new challenge. The space elevator is here, which means my food production is over here, and I don't currently have any way of making new seeds. That might change in the future, I don't know, but I kind of want to make sure that Barcelona gets some food as well. Now, running a train line across the ocean probably is not going to work. But either way, getting the food from over here to all the way over here, which is literally the other side of the planet, is not going to be trivial, especially if I go the other way around. There's mountains and stuff like that in the way, so I might actually have to go through the pole over here to Barcelona and do it like that. Would you look at that? We can actually build a huge train railway across the ocean like that. That's really convenient because that means I can actually get my food all the way from A to B doing it like that. War rages on Earth. We need more resources, bring more nanocomposites so we can continue to give you seeds. Well, I'm pretty much already doing that, and yeah, that's probably about the time we start making seeds ourselves. Okay, so how do we do that? Space elevator now requires twice as much nanocomposite as before. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And we can now recycle compost. Okay, that's actually interesting. So we're going to have to set some for that up. Right, so I just actually realized I was overcomplicating everything in my city over here because you can use different supply centers for different resources. So I just redesigned everything, making everything dedicated to a single resource over here. That keeps everything a lot more clean. It's a little bit messy now because I just redecorated it basically, but other than that, yeah, that should make life a lot easier in terms of my supply lines. Okay then, we need as many resources as possible. It's your only priority now. Seed supply is cut off until further notice. I mean, we kind of need food, people. Come on. They have gone too far, yeah. Just do as they say, we'll take care of it from here. Okay then. Earth has stopped sending various seeds through the space elevator. You have no way of obtaining them at the moment. Okay, new objective, give 200 nanocomposite to space elevator. Okay, so all of that is going to be a problem, but it seems that in the next level we're going to be able to not only build Depots Mark III, which is awesome, but we're also going to be able to make another research center, which is going to focus on, well, you know, seeds, so we can make them ourselves. We're also going to get access to ships, and if I'm not mistaken, we are still going to be able to do our own farming. We're going to be able to do, we'll actually have livestock, I think, at some point as well, at least animals on our planet. All of that will have to be in the next episode, because this one has already kind of reached its capacity. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.